Sometimes we only focus on the highlight reel, like the glamour, what we think looks good, but we don't necessarily know the backstory. My parents split up when I was 13 years old, and that was really challenging. That was really difficult, growing up with that void, questions about my self-worth because of my broken relationship. While getting married and having our 2 children were highlights, it was a difficult time of life. The only bottles we were popping were formula. I remember standing in the queue. We were in Florida and my results came through on my phone and I burst into tears. People probably thought I was crazy in Disneyland in a queue. And I was like, I'm never studying again. I am so done with this. Studying is not a joy to me, but yet walking in obedience required me to go back and go to Bible college of all places. By walking out my calling and what God has given me, placed in my hands to do, I believe that can then help other people walk out their callings. Church ministry is a white male dominated environment, but it doesn't mean that that's how it has to stay. If people say that they're walking into what God has called them to do and they've not had to make any sacrifice, I would question that.
What are you most proud of as you turn 40? Welcome to another episode of Everyday Leadership.
We're going straight in.
We're going straight in. No countdown, nothing. 3, 2, 1. What is that? See, okay. This is exactly what happens when my wife comes on the podcast. This is the 3rd time, is the 4th time she has been on, and every single time my carefully refined process goes out the window. It's just pure chaos and rambunctious.
You're hilarious.
But we're gonna cut this out. I'm gonna leave this in because I want people to know and understand what I've been dealing with as a long-suffering husband.
You're not a serious guy. Anyone who knows me won't believe that anyway. But okay.
Anyway,
I'm ready.
As you can tell, I have my better half, my wonderful, amazing wife, Shirene Agbelusi, back in popular demand on the podcast once again. But this time, we're doing it a bit differently because we are celebrating her birthday. Last time she was up, she was there interviewing me, asking me all sorts of questions. And this time around, we're going to flip it back because she is turning 40.
I sure am.
How are you feeling, my lovely wife, with you turning 40?
I feel great. I feel absolutely wonderful about turning 40. That's a question I've been asked like a number of times in recent weeks, recent months. But I feel great about it. I'm excited for the next decade. I really sense in my spirit that it's going to be a wild adventure, and I'm ready for it. I'm really thankful, grateful to God for where I'm at this stage of my life. I don't feel like I'm lacking any good thing, but I also know He has many, many good gifts to give me and bless me with, so that I can be a blessing to others. So let's do this. Bring on chapter 40.
Okay. So let me flip it back and go a little bit. For those who don't know who Shirene Agbelusi is, who are you? Can you introduce yourself to the people?
Okay, I'm Shirene Agbelusi. I am the associate pastor of an Elim church in Coventry. I am a mum to 2 amazing teenagers, currently aged 17 and 15. I know I don't look old enough to have children that age, but it's true. Apparently this stuff doesn't crack, and I am holding on to that as long as possible. I'm a wife, I'm a mum, I'm a sister, I'm a friend, I'm a leader. I am many different things. I wear different hats depending on what day it is. But the most important thing I can tell you about myself is that I am a child of God and I love Jesus.
Love that. You are someone who's obviously now, you're a pastor. 20 plus years ago when we first met, if I told you you're gonna become a pastor, you would have laughed at me like
I would have laughed.
that could never happen. But I think it's very easy for people to see what people are doing now and not necessarily recognize what that journey has actually been like for them. So when you think back for you in particular around what your journey to where you are right now has been like, what are some of the, I'm going to say the highlights and the lowlights that people can learn from to be able to really take into their own life as they're listening to this conversation?
Yeah, so if I start with some of the lows and then move towards the highs, I would say some of the lows were, challenges as a teenager. My parents split up when I was about 13 years old, and then they got divorced in the years that followed. And that was really challenging, that was really difficult, kind of growing up with that void and questions about I guess my worth. It made me question my self-worth because of like my broken relationship with my dad and then my dad's side of family. So that was really challenging, and then going to uni with I guess a weight of expectation on my shoulders, like the first one in my family for a long time to have gone on to higher education. Everyone just expecting me to do well and wanting me to do well, so there was that weight of expectation. At the same time, I left everything that I knew, and I was trying to find myself as a late teen, early 20s young woman. So that was a real difficult time to navigate. And then, many of your listeners will know our story of getting together at uni, getting married. I was 21 years old when we got married. I was still a baby myself. We had our first child within the first year of being married, and then our second child 2 years later. So while that was a highlight in many ways, or those three things, getting married and having our two children, were highlights, they were also difficult. It was a difficult time of life because while everybody else was living their best life in their 20s, and having that freedom to do what they want and travel and all that sort of stuff, the only bottles we were popping were like formula, and we didn't have any money. And I was still trying to figure out who I was as a 20-something-year-old woman who had just graduated from university, whose life didn't look like how I expected it to look or how anybody else expected it to look at the end of uni. But here I am, a wife and a mum, and I'm trying to navigate and figure out like what it means to be a wife and a mother, as well as be a 20-something-year-old woman. So all of those things that were challenging strengthened me and strengthened my character and built a resilience in me that I didn't realize that I had. And looking back, I realize how resilient I am when I think about some of the things that I've journeyed through. I realized how resilient I was, and I think I used to believe that resilience was that you were just strong, you didn't break, you just kept going. But actually, resilience was that when you fall down, you can get back up, that you bend, but you don't necessarily break, that you cry, but in the morning you push through and you do what you can. It doesn't mean that you don't have those low points. So all of those things, and it's something I say to our kids all the time, like this character building, like it builds character. But the reality is that your challenges in life either make or break you. And you're not always in control of your circumstances, but you can choose how you respond to them and the impact that it will have on your life. And by the grace of God, some of the good things that have come out of my challenges weren't choices. They worked out. God worked things together for my good. But a number of them, I said, you know what, this is not going to stop me. I am still going to have a career. I am still going to provide for our children. I am still going to be a good role model. And all of those things I was still able to do because I had that determination to make those choices. And that's what then creates the highlights, because nobody has the highlights, I don't think, without the lowlights. And sometimes we only focus on the highlight reel, like the glamour, what we think looks good, that we think somebody has it all together, but we don't necessarily know the backstory. And the backstory of a young woman coming from a broken home and dealing with her own brokenness and her own identity questions, that turned into a young woman who was determined to have a successful marriage, was determined to have a marriage that first and foremost honored God and then honored my spouse. I was determined to be a good parent and foster a home environment whereby our children always felt emotionally safe, where they could talk to us, where they had that psychological safety. So those things created the highlights. And because I've always had faith in God, although that had wavered at times, my faith in him meant that I trusted that, you know what, even though life might not look how I want it to look right now, it's going to be okay. It is going to work out. This is not going to kill me, kind of thing. And that's what kept me going.
I guess that goes back to what you said around having a resilient attitude and learning to be able to bend but not break. And for you to then be like, you know what, this is going to be okay, this is going to be a workout, kind of step back into your faith, or anchored in your faith, should I say. It sounds like it's what I'm kind of hearing from you. When you celebrate milestone birthdays such as this, it is very easy to just always look back. And I know one of my favorite quotes from Steve Jobs is, you can connect life looking backwards, you can't connect it going forward. I'm curious, when you think to what you've done and where you're headed to, what would you want to see happen in your life?
Ooh, what would I want to see? I'm big on legacy. Like, I I want to make an impact on this world. And that sounds like a really grand statement. And that can just be my little corner of Coventry, and my sphere of influence. But I do want to be able to make an impact. I want to be able to pass things on to other people, that is lasting. So as a pastor, you know, I preach, I teach, I journey with people through life and that sort of thing. And I want to be able to make an impact on their life where they go on to bear good fruit, right? So plant good seeds in our children, whereby they go on to pass on some of the things, the wisdom, the financial knowledge, the making a good family home, or whatever it might look like. They pass it on through the generations, and there is a legacy. I'd love for them to be able to say, oh, I learnt that from my mum, or I learnt that came from my grandmother. I don't just want to leave the world as I found it. I want to be able to do things that are lasting. So I love supporting other leaders. I love working with other women in leadership, and I love leading in a church environment. And I'm looking forward. I really believe that I can, with God's help, like make an impact on other people and make an impact on the world if I do the things that He's called me to do. So looking forward. I'd love to speak more and share what God is doing in my life, because I really believe, particularly as a Black woman in church leadership, there's not many of us. So I really want to model that well, and I know that I'll have to navigate some stuff and tread a path so that other people can come behind me and tread it a little bit easier, as others have gone before me already and done the same. So yeah, I don't know if that answers your question really.
When I think about you talking about legacy and talk about making a difference in your small corner of the world, and I think about what you didn't just said around being a black woman, being a black woman ministry, being that many of you, and you also wanted to make a difference and change in that space. Isn't that a weight that you're choosing to carry? And if so, why are you choosing to carry as opposed to just focusing on you and focusing on your growth, your family, your journey, and all those different bits and pieces?
Yeah, I think to a degree it's not a weight that I've chosen. I believe like it's part of what God has called me to do. I believe like God puts your desires in your heart, gives you the desires of your heart. So I believe He gave me the desire to want to make a change in this area. So it does come with a weight of responsibility, but I'm not responsible for every black woman that will go into ministry, but I have a responsibility to my calling. And by walking out my calling and what God has given me, placed in my hands to do, I believe that can then help other people walk out their calling. So I'm not trying to do it for everyone else. In some regards, I am focusing on me, but part of focusing on me is modeling well what leadership in ministry looks like. It's also pushing against some of the boundaries and reshaping what it looks like and bringing down some of those stereotypes. I do church ministry is a white male dominated environment, but it doesn't mean that that's how it has to stay. So in many regards I am doing me, but in doing me I am also making the way a bit clearer and a bit easier, hopefully, for other people. I want to go into a space and create more space for people who look like me to step into that space. And I want to always hold up a mirror to younger women so that they can hopefully see themselves and see that there is space for somebody that looks like them as well.
Mm. You talked about walking in step with basically what God has planned for you. I'm curious, I want to double down into obedience because I think it's a topic that people just talk about. Yeah, I'm doing what God called me to do. I'm doing what God's called me to do. It's easy. Like, what is it like walking in obedience with the calling that God has put on your heart? What's the real behind a statement such as that?
Yeah, good question. I think if people say that they're walking into what God has called them to do and they've not had to make any sacrifices, I would question that, because it does come with sacrifices. People see me on the stage every Sunday leading a service or preaching, or they might see me at conferences or whatever, but they don't necessarily see what goes on behind the scenes. It's not all glitz and glamour. And part of the obedience is that I have, made some sacrifices. This job doesn't pay the big bucks, certainly not in this country. I probably could be earning more doing something else. For example, I put myself out there and I have to make myself uncomfortable. So to do what God has called me to do, I've had to step out of my comfort zone, which is just, serving the tea and coffee and volunteering and doing hosting and that sort of thing, like hospitality in church, to actually like leading and being upfront, but also being prepared to put my voice into a space and challenge some stuff or share some ideas or share my heart. And a lot of the time that has required me to step out of my comfort zone. And if I had it my way, things would be easy, right? You would choose the easy route. But often God doesn't take you through the easiest path because he knows that there's something that he needs to build and develop in you. So for me,
Mm.
obedience has definitely required some sacrifice. I'm committed to this local church, to Coventry Ealing, for as long as God calls me into this space. You know, you have a job that could take us around the world. We could be living in another country. And that's a choice that we. But
Understood.
you've made peace with that with the Lord, haven't you?
I've made peace with it. I have made peace with it. It's a work in progress.
So yeah, that obedience has meant like being fiercely committed to this local church and going to Bible college and studying. When I finished my counseling studies, I was like, I remember standing in the queue. We were in Florida and my results came through on my phone and I burst into tears. People probably thought I was crazy. In Disneyland in a queue, and I was like, I'm never studying again. I am so done with this, because I was done. Like, studying is not a joy to me, but yet walking in obedience required me to go back and pick up the textbooks and go to Bible college of all places. That was really outside of my comfort zone. So yeah, I feel like anyone who says that they're walking in what God has called them to do and they're having the time of their life and have not had to sacrifice anything, I would question if they're doing everything God is asking them to do.
Yeah, and I think I love that take on it. I think that's the reality of it. I think there's so much phrases that are used, and we'll talk about God and talk about our lives and our journeys in such a very simplistic kind of way. But I guess even when you look at some of the characters in the Bible, they all went through ridiculous amount of challenges and suffering and strife and loss, as well as obviously the good times.
Hmm.
But it's not always a straightforward linear journey when you're called, when you're chosen. And chosen always looks like different things. For you, it's being a pastor, but for other people, like my call is different to your calling, but it still requires that same element of walking obedience, courage, faith, stepping outside your comfort zone, and all those different things that you kind of described. So that's important to be able to name that as you think about. And then is courage something that you would say that as you reflect on your 40 years, is courage something that you've always had? But there might be times when it's been hidden. But would you say you've always been someone who's been very, very courageous?
No, like even in a really practical sense, I don't like we gonna go away, and I don't want to do the scary rides, and I don't want to do heights and all that sort of stuff. Like I don't love that sort of stuff. And as I said, I would have described myself even as confident, let alone as courageous. I th- and there was a time where, and I've said this to you before, that I didn't have enough faith of my own, and I had to like borrow yours. Like you had enough faith for what you could see our future could be, and what the future could hold for our family, for example. And I was just riding on your own faith for a while until I had enough of my own. So I feel like I haven't naturally been courageous. It's something that I've had to develop by feeling afraid, but doing it anyway and stepping into a space that isn't my comfort zone, and then getting the receipt like, oh, it worked out, it was okay. Therefore, the next time I can look at that receipt, I can reflect on it and say, oh, this feels similar to that, but it worked out. Let me step into this in faith. Let me step out of my comfort zone into this new space, trusting that this too will work out. I might not be able to see that yet or really know what it's going to look like, but I know that staying here is not going to make me progress. So what's the worst that can happen? Let me give it a go. And I think courage has been developed as I have done things that I've been afraid to do.
Attributes that you would say you've developed over the last 30 years that you're proud of, actually.
It's always really hard to talk about yourself in those terms, but I feel like I'm that's so strange. It's really hard to say. One of the attributes I feel like I've developed is like a real empathy and warmth to people. So I feel like I feel things deeply. And there was a time where I perhaps thought that that was a negative thing, so a weakness more than a strength, where I would feel like, oh, I'm overly emotional, or I'd feel things deeply. But I've realized that God has made me like that. And in doing so, it's created a real depth of empathy for people and the ability to walk with them and journey with them and hold some stuff that are really difficult to hold. So, I did my counseling training and I practiced as a counselor in various different roles over the years. So in a school setting, I worked with women who had been abused or sexually assaulted, and I've used it in a ministry context, and then informally with people and friends, in many ways, because you just naturally use some of those skills. But I know that my ability to be a good counselor has come from me having a big heart and having a sense where I can feel deeply and hold that pain with somebody and help them journey that through, or journey with them as they walk that through. So that's definitely something that I'm proud of. I'm proud of the fact that I know there will be people that would choose to come to me and tell me difficult things, and they will know that I've got their back and I will be there for them as best as I can. That's definitely something that I'm proud of.
See, what's wrong with that? What's wrong with owning that? It's an amazing attribute to be able to have. Like, people want people in their lives that they can depend on and they can rely on. Actually, let me get a bit personal here.
You
How do you
haven't
think
already?
someone who we've been together for um over half of your life, um, how do you think that our relationship has evolved, and what do you value the most about our journey together?
I think what I value the most about our journey together is that it was built on friendship, and that is still central to who we are. Like, we are really good friends who laugh together, cry together, encourage each other, call each other out, take the mick out of each other, all of that
You
good
tell me.
stuff. All of that good stuff. And I think because we have a relationship that was built on our friendship, we were friends before anything else. That's been a beautiful part of our journey. I think we've both been able to see what the other person can be, and never just let each other just settle and just like settle, oh, this is as good as life gets. We've always encouraged each other to be the best that we can be. And I think you need that in a life partner. If you're going to marry someone, it needs to be somebody that you know you can grow with, that is going to be there for you and you're going to be there for them, but that you can continually get to know each other as you grow and evolve, and that you should be the person that supports that person's growth. So if you have a really tall plant, often there's a trellis, and the role of the trellis is to give support so that that plant can continue to grow. It doesn't flop, it doesn't die. And I feel like we have definitely continued to be the trellis for the other person, to enhance each other's growth rather than get in the way of it, or anything like that.
What's been the biggest lesson that your kids have taught you?
Ooh. I think the biggest thing I've learned about being a parent is that they are listening and watching everything. So you can't be a hypocrite as a parent. You can't be like, oh, it's do as I say, not as I do. Um, they are listening to everything that you say, not just to them, but to other people and behind people's back. And they are watching everything that you do, how you behave as a person, from you driving in the car, to how you are at home, to how, for me, how I am on the stage, on the platform. And that has taught me to be real and be the same person in private as I am in public. Now, to a degree, you're always going to be a bit different in private, right? The level of silliness that we have as a family, and the things we laugh and joke about and do. I'm not necessarily going to do that in church, because that wouldn't be appropriate. But fundamentally, who I am is the same in private as it is in public. And my kids have taught me the value of that. Like, if you're going to have their trust and respect, you need to be the same. Like, your actions and your words need to match up. Like, those two, they make me a better parent and pastor, like, for real, because they will tell you like it is as well. And they're at the stage now where if I say something that's a little off, they'll be like, Pastor Shirene. And I'm like, okay, I need to check myself, because maybe I took it a little too far, but that's what they're there for. They are there to, like, help me be the best pastor and parent and person that I can be. And they do that 100, like, they keep it 100 with us. And I love that about them.
And last but not least, what has been the biggest lessons that friendship has taught you the last 40 years?
Ooh, you can trust people. I was taught growing up, and I feel like it's a cultural thing. You can't trust anyone. Like, that was the mantra that was preached from left, right, and center. You can't trust anyone. Don't trust anyone. Don't tell anyone your business. You can't trust anyone. And while you have to exercise wisdom in who you do trust, if you don't trust anyone, you will end up living a very isolated life. And God didn't design us to live life in isolation. He created us to live life in community, community with Him and community with other people. And friendship has taught me that you can trust people. There are some people who you can trust deeply with the things that cause your heart to celebrate and the things that cause your heart to grieve. And that has been a beautiful lesson. I've had friends that have taught me that you can trust people. And I'm glad that I've learned that.
I think one of the hardest things is always shedding the. When people talk about breaking generational cycles and generational shackles and curses and all those different things like that, a lot of times it's done in reference to money or finance.
Mm.
Um, but actually, there's something around the mantras that we learn, the behaviors and the mindset mentalities that we learn that just pass on from generation to generation, and choosing to intentionally do something different is how you begin to break those patterns. Or very much like you said, like even being able to, like, it's important to trust people. If not, you will not, you just be alone. And people start to wonder, like, oh, why is this person struggling? Why does this person never speak up? It's because of some of these elements that we just carry on because of how we've just been brought up, how we've been indoctrinated, from one, a better word, and learning to be able to break those and give our kids or our friends a different way of looking at life is really, really important.
Yeah, for real.
And failure is something I like talking about. And I'm curious. I'm going to frame this. Sounds very counterintuitive, but I want to frame it this anyway. Do you have a favorite failure?
Do I have oh, just one? I actually have two favorite failures.
I
It's
want to hear
such
it.
a really interesting question. I didn't even think I'd have one answer, let alone two. So, my first favorite failure was that I didn't get the grades that I needed to get into the universities that I applied for. Therefore, I went through a process called clearing, which then got me a place at Coventry University, which I then deferred because I was like, I needed some time. So I deferred a year and came to Coventry University the following year because of that quote unquote failure. And it was in Coventry that I met you. We were in the same year at university. I met you. I met some amazing friends. I started going to the church that I now am part of leading. I went to that church as a student. And when I look back, I can see how God exactly. It's a beautiful thing, right? That's got to be one of my favorite failures. I can see how God was orchestrating everything and moving everything in place. And now Coventry is the place I call home. And I came here because I quote unquote failed. So that's my all-time favorite failure. Second one was, as you'll know, is when I was doing my counselling studies. There was one module I just kept failing. I think I failed it 3 times. Hence the story about bursting into tears in Disneyland when I realized I'd finally passed. But every time I've then done something academic, if you like, that's been challenging. So anytime I found Bible college challenging, or even just studies in general, like when I was first learning to write sermons and all of that sort of stuff, and I found that challenging because it felt like writing an essay. I could look back and be like, nothing was as bad as failing that module 3 times, and yet I did it. So it goes back to that resilience piece and having that receipt where you can look back and say, actually, that was bad. I wouldn't choose it, but that taught me that it can work out. So those are my two favorite failures. And I love that question, by the way. I'm gonna borrow that.
Thank you. I do this for a living, but thank you.
You ask great questions.
Outside of what you talked about, making a difference in church and trailblazing in that area, what is it that you are passionate and purposeful about, apart from women's leadership as well, which you also talked about?
I just am really passionate about everyone meeting their God-given potential and walking in the authority that God has given them. So I really struggle when I see people being held back by life, by circumstances. So if I can help change that in any way, then I would. Some people just need education. They just need a job. They just need good parenting skills or whatever it might be. So sometimes circumstances can hold people back. So for me, I am really passionate about people walking in their God given identity with God given authority, and that looks different for different people. Not everyone's going to be a pastor, not everyone's going to be an exec leadership coach. Some people have different callings in their life, but they need some help to be able to get there. And sometimes that help is just somebody believing in them and investing some time in them, and that can make all the difference. So I'm passionate about those things.
Is that one of your favorite things about what you do at the moment as a pastor?
Absolutely. I love the privilege of journeying with people through the highs and lows of life, because it's not, all weddings. We do funerals too, right? There's both sides of it. But getting to journey with people, see someone grow and develop their own faith, develop as a person, all of that. I love that. And I don't always feel like it has to be credited to me, but I love when I get to be even a small part of that. And sometimes you won't fully know the impact that you have on people. So I'm blessed enough that sometimes people come back and say, "Oh, that sermon that you preached 3 years ago on X, like it really made a difference." Or, "Do you remember praying for me about this situation? Well, this is how it worked out." So being even the tiniest part, the small part of somebody moving from point A to point B, that's a privilege. Like it is an absolute privilege to be able to impact people's life positively, even in a teeny tiny way.
Talk about it being a privilege. I guess I natural side of me gets curious. So what's the other side of that privilege then? Because there's those two sides to everything.
Yeah.
So what's the other side like?
Um, I guess the other side of that is that sometimes it can feel like you care more about somebody's life than they do. And that's really frustrating for me. So at the point where I feel like I care more about your life than I do, I'm out because I can't do it for you, right? Like you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink, type of thing. So there's that element of it where you're meeting with someone or you're talking to them about various different things, and you meet them 2 weeks, 6 weeks, a month later, and they've done nothing different, but they still want to talk about the same situation. So that's one element of it. I think the other element is that you or I pour out so much into other people. Um, it can be difficult to get that back in the same measure. And I've had to be intentional about finding people who will pour back into me because I do pour out a lot. And I'm not going to lie, I've definitely like had a point like met up with somebody and I thought, oh, this is a great, like we're friends and this is a great opportunity for us to share what's going on with each other. And I've left and been like, wow, she didn't ask me one thing about what's going on with me. She just talked the whole time about her stuff. That was more like a counseling session than two friends hanging out. And that's hard, you know. It's not when you adjust your expectations and you're like, okay, this is what I expect from this relationship or this friendship. But there have definitely been times where I feel like, oh, I just need somebody to listen to me and ask me how I'm doing and wait for the answer and, you know, sit with me in a space for a while.
Yeah, I think that's because people tend to see the title rather than the human behind it. 'Cause I know I get it a lot with senior leaders in particular as well. It's like we just talk at them rather than to them in a sense. Is that you think it's the same thing with you as well?
Yeah, they see the role, and I think they see it as that's my role, that's what I'm there for, that's my responsibility to you know, pastoral care, to listen, to be there, to support, and somebody else will be doing it for me. That's, you know, that, or that might not even go in their thinking. They might not even think that far ahead. They're just thinking about this person, Shireen, can meet my needs in this way. And as much as I love doing that, as I've said, you know, in answer to your question, the other side of that is you can end up just pouring out if you're not careful and not have other people pouring back into you.
So how have you learned to be able to prioritize yourself, your well-being, get people to pour back into you?
Again, that's been a process, and I'd say I'm not always consistently good at it. So I can fall into times I'm like, oh, actually, I need to spend some good quality time with some people. I've had to be intentional about developing relationships with the people that I know I can trust and that can carry and hold that space for me, that don't see me as Pastor Shireen but can see me as Shireen as well as Pastor Shireen, but they can separate the title from the person. So it's been really important for me to have those people in my life and develop those relationships and to have those as formal relationships as well. I've got an amazing mentor by the name of Kate Coleman, like to sit with her for an hour and a half, 2 hours, and know that she is completely invested in me, is wonderful. As I've said before, therapy has been a part of that in the past. As well, my relationship with you, being able to talk to you and just verbally like get it all out, externally process as I like to do.
Mm-hmm.
That has been like waiting for you to wake up so I can just get out everything that's on my mind. But those things have been really important. But it takes intentionality. It doesn't just happen, particularly with the relationships, and that's tricky for a pastor, developing those relationships. But I've managed to get some good ones.
Nice. I guess as part of that growth, I'm curious, what have you gotten better at saying no to when you think back over the last 20 to 30 years?
I've realized I don't have to be everything to everyone, and saying no to things that particularly encroach on like my family time or my me time, so like my day off and my weekends. I've got better at protecting that space. So we all need time for ourselves. We need time to rest and recharge. I definitely need time where I'm just with my family and focusing on them. And I've been better at saying no to anything that gets in on that. And sometimes you can feel a sense of obligation, right? Oh, I haven't seen this person for ages, or I'm not actually doing anything on Saturday. Maybe I should meet up with them. But it's okay not to be doing something on Saturday and still say I'm not available, because I'm not. Because I've protected my Saturday to spend with my family. So I've definitely got better at saying no to things that encroach on my me time and my family time. Um, and I've got better, particularly as I've been doing more like speaking and preaching and stuff like that in different locations. Saying no to things that I think somebody else could do a better job. Like, I'm at the point now where I'm like, I don't have to do that for a third year in a row. Let me recommend somebody else to do that, because I reckon they can bring something new and fresh and even better than I can into that space. I don't have to say yes because I enjoy doing it, and they keep asking. Actually, maybe it's time to make some space for other people. So that's a no that I've really enjoyed, particularly in the last year. Say no, but I know somebody who you should ask. That's a great
Um,
feeling.
I love that. Because then, like I say, back to your point around even legacy and what's important, is giving other people space and opportunities and even identifying people that other people might not know because they're in different networks and bringing them into spaces like this, which is brilliant. So there's a question actually that I have for you, which came from someone in your household. And the question asks, is the life that you're living right now in 2024, the life you imagined 20 years ago when you were at university?
Oh, I want to know who asked that in my household.
It was
Um,
Nala.
it was the dog.
It was a dog. The dog asked it.
She makes the most sense out of you guys anyway, so that makes sense. Is it the life I imagined? I don't know if I'd say it's the life I imagined, but it's the life I dreamed of. Like, how life looks now is what I hoped and dreamed that life would look like as a woman approaching her 40s. Yeah, in terms of being married, having children, having a purpose in life, a career, a calling, all of those sorts of things. Definitely what I hoped for. So I'm really grateful for what my life looks like. Did I always think it was possible? No, there were times where I doubted it, but that's what your imagination's for, right? It's to picture things that don't seem possible or aren't reality at that point in time. So I'm really grateful for how my life looks 20 years on.
When did you doubt it?
When did I doubt it? Um, Maybe not 20 years ago at university, but I think perhaps younger than that, before that, like, is the life that I dream of achievable? Is it attainable? Or is it a fairy tale in my head? So probably didn't doubt it like in the last 20 years, but I definitely would have doubted it as a teenager. When I would think ahead, it was a dream, and dreams don't always come true.
Is there anything that you would do differently
In my life, like what sort of
for the
times?
last 20 years?
There are definitely some things I know now as a parent, now that our children are older, that if I had known that when they were younger, I may have parented a little bit differently. I may have made some different choices as a parent. But hindsight's a wonderful thing. I probably would have like, I don't know, saved more, or there's loads of little things, but largely no, because I feel like everything that's happened has got me to this point, and changing any of the things that have happened in the 20 years may have made today look different, and I may be a different person than I am today. So largely no, I wouldn't change much, but definitely like there are things I know now as a parent that had I known when the kids were smaller, I may have done differently.
Let's have a bit of fun. Let me ask you some quick fire questions. I remember you did this to me, so I'm going to flip it back on you. The first one was if you were having coffee with Jesus or Supermalt, what is the one question you would ask him?
I mean, I prefer coffee to supermalt, so that would definitely be a thing. What's the one question I'd ask Jesus? I guess I would want to know, like, what is something that I don't know about you that you want me to know, or something that I haven't fully understood about you that you want me to understand, because my journey of faith and being a Christian is to know God better. So there are definitely things that I want to know more, and I'd love to know, like, what's the thing that He wants me to grasp, but that I perhaps haven't grabbed a hold of as yet. Yeah, that would probably be one of the questions. And I don't think this is a thing, but I would want to know, like, oh, what would my nan say if she was here, if she could see me now, or what does she think of me? So my nan passed away when I was like 9.5 years old, and she introduced me to Jesus. She took me to Sunday school. She was really fundamental in my life, and I wish I had had more years with her. I wish she was around to see the woman that I am today, and I actually feel a little bit emotional just talking about her, and I am sad that she isn't here to see her prayers answered. So I would love to know what she thinks, and like what she would say to me if she was here, and I feel like only Jesus could answer that question.
I love that. But I'm going to go back to the rules. It's a quick fire.
I'm so sorry.
Quick fire. Let's go again. If you could be remembered for one thing, what would it be?
Remembered for one thing, my heart. I want people remember me for my heart. What's on the inside is more important than anything externally.
What's your favorite Christmas movie and what does it say about you?
I don't know if it's a Christmas movie, but it always comes on at Christmas. I'd say Mary Poppins. And what it says about me is that I'm fun. I love to sing. And Mary Poppins was someone that came into that family's life and changed it and then left again. And that's the role I think I play for some people. Like I come along, I impact their lives, and then I move on to the next.
Tell me about the three most influential people in your life and how have they impacted you.
So my nan, as I said, she introduced me to Jesus. She was just like a ray of sunshine and taught me so much in 9.5 years. She shaped largely who I am today. So my nan is definitely one of the most influential people in my life. Someone who I've never met who has definitely inspired me is Doreen Lawrence, so the mother of Stephen Lawrence, who people know was was murdered as a result of a racial attack. Doreen Lawrence's strength and resilience and her determination to fight for justice for her son and to shine a light on truth and justice is so inspiring, and particularly as a mum and a mum of a black boy who's had to fight for him at times, particularly like in the education system and stuff like that. She really inspires me. So she's impacted my life in that way, I would say. And Michelle Obama. And the reason why I say her is because what I loved about Michelle and Barack is that he was totally doing him and she was totally doing her, yet they both supported each other and they like made each other look good. And that for me is really inspiring when I think about our relationship. Like, my husband can be successful and I can still be me in my own right and do my thing, and we both shine together and be a power couple, but be like influential and powerful in our own right as well. So she's one of them.
What's one myth about your job?
A myth about my job. I think people think pastors only work on a Sunday. That is not true.
What occupation other than your own would you like to try?
I tell you all the time, I want to be you when I grow up. So, like, I would want to be you, big boss, executive leadership coach, founder of Mindset Shift, walking in your calling, doing everything that God has called you to do, and absolutely bossing it and impacting lives and organizations and shaping things for the better. So if I could have another occupation other than myself, I would have yours. I'd be you for a day. And you
Have to
get to
eat.
fly around the world. I forgot that bit. Like, you
I'm
travel
waiting
a
for
fair
that. I'm
bit.
waiting.
You know, I wouldn't mind some of those perks.
I was waiting for that. If you had to eat one meal for the rest of your life, what would it be?
One meal. Saturday soup. If you grew up in a Jamaican household, like, you know about Saturday soup, and Saturday soup lasts for longer than just Saturday. It's got carbs in it, it's got protein in it, it's got vegetables in it, and I feel like it is everything. So I would be good with that. Some Saturday soup with some lamb neck and some dumpling and some yam and some chocho, all of that good stuff in it. I'm good. And the right amount of Scotch bonnet pepper
Mm.
just floating in that pot. Ooh. Mm.
This is not linked to the quick fire. I'm curious because you said earlier on that you are a pastor operating in a white male dominated world, especially in the movement that you operate in. But
Mm.
there's a difference between being a pastor and a female pastor. I think very, very easily people can try and put female pastors in a box. And I know that you definitely do not like that because you cater to every single person.
Mm.
So how do you actually deal with that? And how do you feel when people try and put you in this box around, oh, you're a female pastor, you only work with women and that's it?
Mm. I can definitely do both. So I feel like when people, even if people refer to me as a female pastor, of course I find that irritating because my gender really doesn't have anything to do with it. But it's more of like a eye roll moment than a oh, I grab my heart in pain moment. Because it's like, I think it's an issue, not an ish me. Like, it's their stuff, not my stuff. But the thing is, when people try and put me in a box, what they're doing is underestimating me. And when you're underestimating me, you're underestimating God. So that never works out, right? If you underestimate God, he always will show up and show off. So I feel like that's their stuff. And it spurs me on actually to just prove people wrong when they underestimate me. Not that I have to go after it, but I just do me, and I know that God will shine a light on it. But I would love to get to the point where me being a black female pastor is not a thing. I'm just a pastor. Like, there's so many of us that it's not an anomaly. And right now I'm in the minority in terms of that, but I'm okay with that.
What is a question that I've not asked you, but you wish I asked you?
What would I have said to my younger self?
when you're 18?
Whatever age.
What would you have said to your younger self?
I would have said, sis, keep dreaming and dream big, because God can do immeasurably more than you can even imagine.
How often have you repeated that to yourself?
Um, that God can do immeasurably more frequently, because sometimes when I think about both where I am and where I'm going, or where I believe God is taking me to, it is bigger than my imagine. Like, I never would have imagined being where I am and what I believe God is taking me into. I never would have imagined that. And I know when I get there, it will be immeasurably more and bigger. But it can feel scary. Sometimes it goes back to stepping out of that comfort zone. That, wow, if I can grasp that in my mind and still know God can do more than that, like, that's crazy to me. Sometimes it can feel a bit scary, but it's good. Like, it makes it even more of a wild adventure, which is what decade number 4 is going to be all about.
And what would then be one piece of advice you would give to people listening right now?
I mean, one of the things that I talk about regularly is what I touched on earlier, is that we're not created to live life in isolation. And it can be difficult to find people that you trust. Sometimes we get let down by people or hurt by people. But find your tribe, find your community, find a handful of people. It doesn't have to be loads, certainly quality over quantity, that you can do life with, the highs and lows of life with. That is so important, and that may change. That group of people may change. Some of them will like stick with you for a long period of time, and that might change over time. But yeah, I feel that's really important. People grow better when they're surrounded by other people who are also growing and encouraging them to grow. So that would be my one piece of advice. Like, don't do life in isolation. You weren't created that way.
I guess my final question to you then, as always, how do you define leadership?
I define leadership as being able to um, like help people to be even better than I am. Like, if I'm leading someone and I'm not helping them to be even better, then I don't feel like I'm doing a good job. So that's what leadership is about for me. That's what Jesus did. Like, he was with his disciples for 3 years and he taught them all this stuff. He modeled good leadership to them, and then he said, like, now you go and do it, and you will do even greater things than I did. And that for me is what true leadership is about, that I model well what I can do, and that the person that I'm modeling it to can take that and do it even better than I did.
What are you most proud of as you turn 40?
I am Reverend Shirene Agbelusi. Like, I am so proud of that. Pastor is a title that people have, and they're not necessarily an ordained minister. And I'm not taking anything away from anyone, but I'm a reverend. I'm an ordained Elim minister, and I am so proud of that. I'm proud of that achievement, and I'm really grateful to God that He would call me into that. That's not something that I thought I would ever say, but I'm proud to say it.
That's the perfect way to finish this podcast. And let me just add this. I'm also very proud of you. I'm proud that you are an ordained minister, because this was never the journey that you chose for yourself.
It chose me.
when when we used to talk back in the day. But you stepped into it boldly and courageously. I'm proud of you as a mother, and the way that you parent our two mostly wonderful, sometimes annoying children of the last 17 and 15 years, and so much of what you do. I'm proud to be able to call you like my half, my better half, because of everything that you do, the environment that you create, the friendship that we have, the encouragement that you give me, the space that you allow me to be able to do what I need to do, and even nurture some of my crazy ideas that I have from time to time. Um, for me, it's a joy and a pleasure to be able to walk with you on your journey. And it's an absolute pleasure to celebrate you turning 40. And I look forward to us being here in 40 years, having another conversation when you're 80 and looking back at how things have been going and looking back at the legacy that I know you would have built as you continue to impact the lives of men, women, children in every single environment that you find yourself in as you pour out all God has given you. And there's this phrase I always have that you're born full and you want to die empty, because that's you utilizing everything that God has given you. And that's what you are doing in your lifetime. So well done. I'm really, really proud of you.
Thank you. That's really kind. And it's not just stuff you say on a podcast, it's things that you've said before. So I appreciate you.
This is Everyday Leadership. We'll see you all next week.